Dear friends, glad to see you again on Feygin Live. It is 10:01 Moscow and Kiev time, Thursday, 5th of May, and we're doing a new stream, day 71, with Olexiy Arestovych. I'm glad to see you, Olexiy. Likewise. As usual, I request everyone who has not subscribed to us yet, please subscribe. We are at 1.25 million subscribers, and please subscribe to Olexi's channel. If you're watching that in English, do not forget to subscribe to Privateer Station, and please kindly leave your like. That helps the algorithm to push it to other viewers. We're starting. Let's take a look at the most important. Let's talk about the Spanish pedo at the end of the story. Let's look at the main subject. General situation about the counteroffensive, what Zaluzhny said, and Millie might have confirmed that. Do you know what that war is about? That war is about the headlines. I've been commenting publications for 8 years, several times a day, every day. For 8 years, not a single time, in italic, not a single time, the headline did not, the headline met what I meant. What they publish is a bit different. Not a single time today Zaluzhny said as it is counteroffensive, but the journalists presented it so. He did not say that. The situation is not in the counteroffensive stage. They're doing preliminary actions that have counteroffensive character. So essentially they're performing counteroffensive tacticals at the front. Situation did not change. Western armaments are still pouring in rather slowly. We're not ready for the full counteroffensive, but all the media are running around saying we're counterattacking Russians there. So for the whole day today, I'm running around telling that, no, this is not so. Same thing that Arestovych said. Mariupol kicked the attackers out, and nobody really highlighted the other part of what I said, that situation is very fluid, and it is difficult to gauge what is happening at this very moment. But people do not read that. So if you really, my advice, if you really want to get the information, the true data about the war, do not read the title, read the details inside. That's why tactical counteroffensive activities will not turn into a major counteroffensive, and liberation of Azov steel will not happen if you read about the progress and the fights. Unfortunately, Olexiy, this is human nature. They're always looking for the headlines. Yeah, but we have to consider what is happening. Very often the enemy would throw in fake information and then disprove it, and then basically cause your people to disbelieve anything else that comes. That's what I'm saying. It is inadvisable, ill-advisable to believe any headlines in the modern media. If you want data, read inside, read deep. In general, the line of front has not changed. There's a little bit of movement in Kharkov and Kherson in our favor, but it's hard to tell that, and we shouldn't be telling that it's a general success or general offensive. These are just some activities that might lead to certain success later on, if they will be successful themselves and if we will have enough resources to continue. So the 9th of May, any activity around that date, what do you think they'll be doing? What I seriously see here is that they're trying to destroy Azov. I think that's their idea to give this present to Putin. You know, the best present to their leader is the head of his enemy. They're really trying to destroy Azov Steel and Azov battalion that is defending it, together with Marines and bodyguards and police. But what they're telling us for the third day in a row, it's a non-stop action at Azov Steel, and for the third day in a row, the battle is inside the factory, and it's methodical, and it keeps going. So let me ask you this, as an expert. I'm not an expert, I am the observer. In such a deep enemy territory, is there anything that is possible, anything that can be done to throw some tactical support to people defending that big factory with communication and other things? As an observer, can you tell something? First of all, information. It would be nice. We possibly can help them give ideas. Where are they being attacked from? Where the enemy is regrouping and where they're looking to attack? We used to have a little route to them to evacuate the wounded, but ever since they shot the heli down, we lost this route, so that's not an option anymore. There were people who came and left, who could walk in and out. Very often it was one-way ticket, but there were people who found courage and capability to go there, and some of them even came back. But you do need to realize that these troops are about 60 miles away from the nearest resource, and they're also being attacked with exceeding enemy troops. And the next group is about 120 miles. The problem of Mariupol is being resolved now by a military diplomatic way. I cannot tell about everyone who's assisting us, aiding us, or trying to aid us in this problem, but we're using every first liner from different countries. First people from the countries that he is actually dependent upon. And for a good example is China. He should not be quarreling with China, and China did request him to let their Chinese students, they had over 100 students in that city, out, and he did not budge. He did not arrange anything special for them. They were eventually evacuated, but as a part of a routine other operation. So he pissed off that neighbor to the south, just trying to be principled about Mariupol. And the fact that our people managed to reach to General Secretary of United Nations and to the head of the Red Cross, who helped us to evacuate some of the people, at least that first 100, or the recent 100. And I don't know the exact argument what they used there, but perhaps it was something similar to save the face by not destroying and killing civilians. Because the magnitude of news that there are civilians, there are kids, women, elderly under the factory that Russians are bombing, reached out to pretty much the whole planet. So that provided enough pressure for some of them to be relieved. And there is access from that steel factory to the ocean. Is that true? Yeah, there is. But it's very visible. It's being observed, and You could be shot walking that way from both directions. Yeah, if you meant any naval rescue, that is pretty unreal. Same as any reason from Ukraine, any option from Ukraine to deblockade, buy food. This is not an option at the moment. You know, I prefer to discuss than not to discuss, and yeah, I do hear you. And if anyone will have a brilliant idea, please bring it up. I know that we pretty much at our end of different resources. I think we tried everything we could think about. So if any of our viewers has additional routes, additional thing to try, please offer. As for our efforts to free them, I keep hearing the brainstorming sessions about it. I hear a lot of phone conversation with different power figures in the world. As far as I understand, they use different options. One of the options was to exchange all Russian prisoners for all Ukrainians. And yeah, no, he does not effing care. Could be a million people dying there, civilians, he would not care. All right, we got that. Next. Vladimir Zelensky talked to Steinmeier, so we can say that Steinmeier will come over. And I cannot comment too much detail on that. I know that Ukrainian-German connections and the depth are reliable. Smaller misunderstandings did not destroy these relationships, and we continue to cooperate on military support funds. Oh yeah, like there is a saying in Russia, whoever brings up the past will lose an eye. You know, it's adult world. There are different reasons, different steps, but if you're coming back to the table of negotiations, you don't really go back into that past. You look for new opportunities and what can be done together right now at this point. Politicians and military negotiators cannot afford themselves to dwell on the past. They need to be looking in the future and looking at things from the future perspective, how to achieve certain things, what certain steps will be required to get from point A to point B. And usual people, if there are usual people in this world, they should not be doing these steps, not so much politicians. What goals are we achieving? What are the time frame? What are the results? And that's when it works. Not exactly a precise science, but citing Churchill, war is a process of rude mistakes. Here is a good example of Poland, who is trying to help us. Nobody is looking back at numerous military conflicts that we had between each other. They're not throwing that in the fire of discussions. They are quoting their current president, who I have not checked that yet, but apparently he said there'll be no border between Poland and Ukraine, meaning there's no significant bureaucratic border. So there is a full mode of assistance between Poland and Ukraine, and I'm in communication with a few refugees there. How do people get treated? Just checking if, big country, people can do different things. Some people may be a bit rude or inhospitable. No, all the reviews we get are positive. People are amazed by the hospitality of the Poles and by the fact that they forgot about the past problems we had between our nations, but are looking forward and helping. I think this is European consciousness. The moment people get kind of a European status, or whatever you call it. They stop dwelling on the older issues. What do you think about Marie Le Pen in this case, then? Well, Marie Le Pen is kind of the relic of the past. Well, that's what we're dealing with. It's the future versus the relics of the past. That's what's happening in the conflict with Russia, too. And I think people divided not by national or language or other matters, but by the fact that what do you support? You look for the future, you look for things happening in the future and how make them work, or you look at the past and trying to preserve and maintain things from the past. That also pertains to that grandma with a flag that Russian media depict coming out of her house to meet the troops. That actually reflects that fight between the modern today looking for tomorrow and the current Russian invasion from the past. I need to elaborate on that grandma with a flag that Russia is putting on some of their banners, that she came out to meet the troops with the Soviet Union banner, and then later she realized that Ukrainian troops were not the enemy, because the Soviet banner she actually brought it out to show to Russian troops, hoping that they will avoid destroying her house because they are kind of pro-USSR or whatever. And later Russians destroyed her house anyway, so now she's in Kharkov in hospital and she's cussing them 7 ways to Sunday for not being human and not taking her plea to spare her house. So I have another question here. Viewer is writing, some regions of Donbass find themselves under a new occupation. And you'd be surprised, but the local occupation administration is forcing people to do things for it. And general problem there with civilians who are being forced by occupants to cooperate with them. And your advice was to cooperate with them as much as you can. Document what's happening. That'll help you later to avoid persecution. I believe the power of Ukraine needs to prepare a document, and they also need to adopt a couple of legal actions based on the precedents of the international law in such situations, to negate some of the positions of the international experts who think that any cooperation with occupant forces is a true military crime, war crime, that doesn't have an expiration date. So we'll need to address that. So the document should be used as advisory for people who are being abused by the occupants. So would you throw anything, any additional data about Kherson? I had some information that needs a bit of checking, so this is preliminary. There was an offer in Melitopol, one of the southern occupied cities, to cooperate education-wise, but schools refused to do that, and some of the directors, at least 4, were kidnapped to an undisclosed location. So we're just hopeful that maybe we can find them alive. And, that's kind of the feature of, it's not the bug, it's the feature of Russian army. In the first Chechen war, it was Russian troops who started trading in men. It was not Chechens who sold the first people, it was Russian officers who sold some of their soldiers to slavery. You and I know that GRU always had the tactic of capturing hostages, and Chechens were saying that they basically responded in kind during that conflict. And they're saying that those explosions, some of the terrorist acts, some of them were Chechens, but some of them were also conducted by the Russian army to increase the degree of heat and pressure on that front. It's a convoluted, difficult story. Yes, it is. So anything changed during the last 24 hours? We see the howitzer. So that video you're describing, that sounds like you watched not the M777, you're watching the Russian Hyacinth B. Because we could have showed American in our clips, but we haven't yet. And I think it's already shooting, but even at the moment, it is not the quantity that may significantly affect the situation on the front. They do need to have a ton of extra troops, tens of those groups on a certain direction, in order to actually take any advantage. And the same thing for us, we need to high concentration of what we have in order to produce results. And I believe it will not happen sooner than the end of May. It depends on too many factors. But that's what I'm saying, from the end of May to mid-June, that will be changing situations with the new armaments in noticeable quantities. All right, we'll track that. Just make sure you let us know when things happen. I don't know if you noticed that, but now all the propagandists in Russia are screaming about the fact that there will be no general mobilization on that day. It is, of course, not for Ukraine, it's for their own internal consumption, because in Ukraine, you'll still have to fight with them anyway. But inside, in Russia, they are starting to tell people that don't worry, you will not be burning in tanks and you will not need to lift your butt from the sofas. I don't know, did you notice they've been pretty nervous in Russia? Maybe it's our effect or not? Well, that's the thing. One thing when you're sitting on a sofa and collecting victories, and another is when you need to go somewhere to feed the evil Ukrainian army and possibly die. Here's these statements more probably showing that they actually measured the possible response to such a problem, to such a question in Russia. Even look at the burning conscription points, offices. The main point of that is burning all the documents. How to call you if they lost any document they had of you? So I suspect they counted the numbers of the burnt ones, and they realized that that's a much bigger sentiment in the society. And then, at first, one of his officials, Shoigu, refused to talk on that, and then Putin also told some of the virtual stewardesses in one of his shows that show-ups on the news that there will not be a mass conscription or mobilization to the army, because it does appear that this subject is a touchy point for the Russians, and definitely a touchy point for Kremlin as such. So today Volodin continued the subject of nuclear strike. He probably communicated it with Putin's office because he's a cowardly creature himself, and he did state that Russia will not be making any first nuclear strike that Russia will only retaliate if it has to. So you can connect that with Lavrov's statement the other day. It looks like their statement has changed on the nuclear stance, that they're not going to target anyone first, that they will be only responding if hit. Because I suspect they started to realize that it is not Moscow that'll blow up, but Putin's bunker that might go up first. And yeah, I want to intervene. One of his speakers actually did start saying that it is important to not fall into nuclear war, and that United States is also a potential winner in such a conflict, even though we all can be destroyed. And they basically making a bunch of statements in light of the new coming holiday that they're not supporting mass mobilization, they're not supporting nuclear war. So if we take these as guidelines, as weighted statements, then the war will continue as it's going, and it'll take more time. It is futile, at least, to compete with the Western Lend-Lease. We can only discuss how long it will take us to conclude that. Do you mean they will not complete anything by the 9th or leave Ukraine by the 9th of May? Of course, no. But it probably will mean that we'll have months of bloody warfare ahead of us. All right. We also saw you giving an interview to Moldavia television. You gave your point of view. And let's talk about that. Do you think it was a maneuver from Kremlin to try to shake the situation a bit? As far as I know, the powers in Moldova are very serious about these threats. We all talk about Transnistria, but there is also Gagauzia. And it's a weird mix of people's views on the world order in that corner of Moldavia. So they're almost like frozen in the old USSR ways of thinking. And it's one side. The other thing is that not Moldova is taken seriously. Americans and Romanians are taken seriously too, because otherwise why they would be throwing additional troops to the border. So while it is not clear how Russia could or would be deploying troops there, but according to some data that some of the Russian specialists actually entered Transnistria as dressed as civilians. How did they get there? Airport? Tiraspol? Through the third countries. So it does look like there are some people who know how to solve military questions that are being active there right now. I think between them, Moldavia, America and Romania, they do know what may be going on there, and none of them is eager to let Russia get away with it. And even Moldavia Parliament, I think, took a necessary step in the legal side of things when they allowed non-citizens to be part of Moldova army. So that's quite an open invitation and statement about how they're going to protect themselves. All right, in America, I think in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article about attacks on those command outposts that you hit with artillery a few days back, and they were giving data that it was driven by satellite intel, American satellite intel, and they're saying that new technology are the ones allowing for such precise strikes. that lead to the death of generals and Russian leaders. How can you comment on that? Well, first of all, we know what we are doing too. We're on our land, we know where they are, we know how to hit that. And a lot of Russia actually suffered a lot of casualties, high-level casualties, even at the beginning of war when we did not have that much data support, info support from the allies. Right now they are providing us more input. But there is a date. I would not be giving that exact date, but you can, I'll tell it later at some point. When their data started coming in, and you can tell technically everything before that is just Ukraine, everything after with the help of allies. And Ukraine is comfortably leading with the high-profile hits. It is always, though, a sentiment in the society that Western weapons and material support and intel support are important, probably in that order. It is hard to gauge the order itself because situational awareness, so-called, a term from NATO documents, it is extremely important. But you need to understand how it works. Imagine you get a NATO satellite image. Stationary object, we think that's a target so-and-so. We cannot just take it and believe it. We need to confirm that that is the situation for now as well. And we need to check that, and then we need to use radio intercepts and radio intel, and if everything, all three of these come through, then we start considering this picture as a possible target. It's not that you just get a picture and then take it as the suggestion. First of all, you're not doing that without due diligence. Second, we are saving shells and ammo. We are not Russia, who is shelling everything in the vicinity. So it is a difficult process where hundreds and a lot of people are involved who create the strategy, who create the plan, who create the availability of targets, and then they negotiate the most important ones. So it is the whole story. Bless you. Thank you. That is reminiscent of a very difficult surgery and at the same time at the play of a very sophisticated orchestra. It is not a simple task, but as we see right now, the communication and interaction between the West and Ukraine is very fruitful. So we are thankful to our Western allies. So yeah, I also get questions, why are we sneezing here? Well, me personally, I got sniffles because I got lights here staring at me and it's a little bit of dust with books and I just keep sneezing. I'm a bit allergic. On my side, it's a little different. It's AC and some air circulation. 450,000 people watching us. Again, reminding everybody, as we're climbing towards 500,000, please share the links to that cast in your media with your friends. If you're watching that in English, subscribe to the Privateer station and click like. Each like of yours brings that video to the eyeballs of 10 more people. And we understand some of them may not like it, but at least that gives an option for them to understand the nature of this conflict in depth. trust me, I got a lot of communication from you describing what brought you here. I know how it affects people. All right, we've been 35 minutes live. I have the last question. It was important that Shari was finally captured, that criminal in Spain that tells that the office of president is working, regardless of war, but apparently they are working. And prosecution services of Ukraine have not given up their attempts to extradite to Ukraine such agents of Russia who've been working and fulfilling Russian influence in Ukraine. The fact that he was released without passport and he needs to be present and confirm his presence at location. Don't be despaired by that. It is still a step in the right direction. He's not leaving the place. He's gonna be eventually arrested proper. So we discussed that person, that Shari, a while ago. Is there a way to increase pressure on him and other figures similar to him? Is there any operative methods to increase the effect of hunting for them out there in Europe or in States? Can we just deliver him somehow to Ukraine? Well, first of all, we're a legal country, and it's just Spanish territory, and they got their own court. As Ms. Venediktova said today, General Prosecutor, she said that these prosecutions can last for years. Yes, it's not an easy situation. It's a complex story. And it takes time to get him. And we need to follow certain accusations that we have grounds to believe are easier to be proved. So he was accused in treason and in hate crimes, or igniting the hate crimes. This is the articles that we have enough proof. So we should not expect that he'll show up in our court tomorrow. It may take several more years, but we're on the right track. So we basically calculated, I suspect our attorneys calculated enough and collected enough proof to deliver that to Spanish investigative system to support their accusations. So we'll see how Spain will work now. It is their turn. And it's also a question of how to mix it proper, the sanction pressure and the Spanish court system. There are nuances. And I would observe and monitor what would be the mutual dance between the Special Service of Ukraine and attorneys, district attorneys, and the system of accusation and the Spanish prosecution system. Anyway, this is good news. I have to be optimistic. I am the person who had given 5 years of my life and the title of attorney in Russia to prosecuting that person. As long as it does take time, but as long as you're on your right track, you will get the results, even though sometimes it's hard. All right, I suggest we meet tomorrow. Friday will be a good day and a lot of things to discuss. I remind everyone that through the NFT, we're collecting money and we want to do an auction and sell some items to support Ukraine, some of the charity functions there. So please do not forget. Olexiy, see you tomorrow. Everybody else, see you tomorrow. Thank you. Goodbye.